Now, yes. Okay, so welcome all of you. For the ones who are joining us for the first time this semester, I need to introduce you a little bit what a book a month is, right? Probably you have seen some things in our website, or maybe you attended one of our open classes. But I mean, a book a month is a small school. It's just basically me, Audio, and Gabi, right? I am the main teacher and creator of a book a month. My name is Ana Carolina Torquato. And Audio is my husband. We have been teaching together for, I think, since 2022, but a book a month exists for 5 years already. And we're both PhDs and postdocs in literature. We are researchers, but also we have this project, which is something that is really rewarding for us, for both of us, right? At the moment, I'm a teacher and researcher at the University of Vienna. So I'm teaching from a different time zone, right? And here, what I do is exactly the same as we do in a book a month, but I do it in Portuguese. I teach at the Institute of Romance Languages, Línguas Românicas, and I teach literature in Portuguese for the foreigners. Well, they are nationals, right? I am the foreigner, so they read Portuguese as a foreign language, and this is what I do. Yeah, so what I have been doing in a book a month really helps me in my work at the university, so this is really nice that you know, because I'm doing the same thing in different worlds. I'm teaching short stories, novels intermediate, and novels big reads. Audio teaches the other two courses, advanced and reading class. And we also have Gabi, who is teaching our English classes, right? So Gabi, we have two levels, English intermediate and English advanced, 2 times 2 groups each, right? So you can alternate if you want. Some of you are taking the English classes already. And Gabi is a great person and teacher. She was my student actually at the university when I taught at FAI in Curitiba. I used to teach at the Letras course, so she has a degree in Letras, and she also has a world certificate, which is issued by the University of Cambridge, which guarantees that she can teach worldwide. Right, so this is a very prestigious one, and we really enjoy the way that she teaches English. That's why we have invited her to work with us. Plus, she's a great person, right? So you probably already met her, for the ones who are taking English as well. And I think that's it for the introductions. I believe that most of you have already been acquainted with our page and you have our information online. But of course, if you have any questions, any doubts, right? Alguma dúvida, just ask and I'll be happy to answer, okay? Just some important info. By the time that you enroll, you get your matrícula, right? You enroll. I send you all the info mostly together with this link tree, right? And you can scan this code if you want, it works. But you can also save the link tree, which has all the information that you need throughout the whole semester. Yeah, so this is what you're going to need. Yeah, so let's begin with the calendar, which is really important because it concentrates all the information that you need for the course, right? You, of course, have the reading schedule, the dates and the titles and the authors that we're reading. Plus, everything is linked, right? When you click on the title, you can access the PDF. And when you click here, you can access the audiobook version of the short story, right? And most of them, they have audiobooks. Yes, we're going to talk about the audiobooks later because I think it's a really important topic, right? So it's all linked. Plus, you also have the specific button on your link tree which will direct you directly to our folder, which contains all the short stories, right? So you have different ways of accessing it, but everything at your hand. We also have other information that is important in your calendar. For example, the time of all the courses and the office hours, which I'm going to explain to you what those are in a second. And also all the readings that we're doing in all the courses, right? So if you're interested in following more than one course at the same time, you can check the reading lists through here as well. You know when we are going to read each of these authors. So the office hours, for the ones who are joining us at the moment, the office hours are really extra time that you have with us, right? It's like plantão tira-dúvidas. You just come, we'll be there. We alternate between Audio, I, and Gabi, right? Each of us take shift during the semester. And you can check those dates in here, right? It happens twice a month, right? And you don't need to book. Sometimes the students ask like, I think reservar. No, you don't have to book ahead. You just come, right? You have the link in your link tree. You just come and you can come to talk, to clarify your doubts, to discuss some reading, or maybe talk about anything that you want, right? For example, if you are not able to come to any of the sessions of your short stories course, nor on Tuesday, nor on Wednesday, you can wait for the office hours and talk to the teacher who is there, right? We'll be happy to help you with that. And sometimes you have private classes, right, Martha? So sometimes it's just Martha and I talking. Sometimes it's it happens that maybe you will also have the privilege to have like private session with the teacher for an hour and a half, which is extra practice for you. Okay, so it's really good. Okay, so these are the dates. You have like the names of each of the teacher who's going to be there, right? I'm gonna be doing the first one on the 25th of August on Monday from 9 a.m. to 10:30. As you can check, we also share the link with you and we send you a reminder on WhatsApp just in case you forgot, right? So then we can remind you as well. Okay, some important info, people, and I'll be brief just so we can have the time to do all the introductions because I really want to hear more from you. You can alternate between this course and the Wednesday group, right? Both of them, they follow the same curriculum. So this is just an extra day for you to be able to, if you cannot come today, you can come tomorrow, right? So it's usually how it works. And most of you make use of that. So just would like to remind you. If you couldn't read to class, and this is something that I hear all the time for students, teach, I'm not gonna come because I haven't had the time to read. So I'm gonna be a bit like afraid of talking in class and such. I mean, I will never ask you direct questions, just like, Fulano, please tell me what happens on page 5, right? I'll never ask you this kind of questions. So just come because you can catch up later and you will take advantage of the class, right? Anyways, it will help you understand better the text itself, okay? And if you're afraid, you can just like send me a message. Today I couldn't read, so I'll know and I'll never like approach you for anything, okay? So just come. It would be nice anyways. Some of you have already paid for the semester, but we just do this reminder because we are the ones who control everything, we and our accountant, right? So if you chosen your monthly payments, please do it by the 5th of each month so we can organize our finances as a school. And we know how many students are we going to have in each of the classes, right? And I mean, if you can't continue, there is no problem. There's no like if you give up, if you decide that you cannot come anymore, that you cannot continue for whatever reason, there's no problem. There's no fee, não tem taxa nenhuma, just tell us, but please tell us, right? Because remember, if you're ghosting someone, you're ghosting me. If you're not replying on WhatsApp, you're ghosting me directly, right? So please talk to me so I know how many of you will be in the group, okay? And at the end of the semester, we always issue certificates for our participation. And the certificates, they do not only comply the time that you spend in class, but also the time that you spend reading, right? We compute that as well. And this is a model that I follow. I learned this while studying in England for my master's. They compute also the dedication that you give to the course, right? Because it also counts. So by the end of the semester, you'll be able to receive like 60 hours of certificate. It's almost like taking a course at the university. Of course, it doesn't have the same value, right? The juridical value, but in amount of time, it's really worth it. Okay? Do you have any questions so far concerning the this logistics of a book a month? Anything? No? Okay. I will introduce you to what we are reading this semester, right? We usually, in a book a month, in short stories, we tend to read two, at most three short stories by each author, right? So in the end, during the semester, you can expect to read at least like 10 authors, right? So it's a great course for you to be able to know a little bit more about literature, different styles of writing, different types of narratives coming from different places in the world, right? And also speak the more that you can about your ideas and your experience reading. Yes. So just as an introduction for whom we are reading this semester, right? We start with Arthur Conan Doyle. And I think that you might be acquainted with his work, right? We're going to talk about your experience reading Conan Doyle later. But he's a really celebrated author, right? He's a sir. And when you are a sir in the UK, it means that you paid some kind of prestigious duty to the culture of the English language or in the arts and etc. Yes. We have Sir Ian McKellen, we have Sir Paul McCartney, right? It's because they did something great, usually, right? Nowadays, in previous times, it was just like a title that you could buy. I don't know if you can still buy it, but I think nowadays it's more like you earn it somehow. Yes. So he is actually from Scotland. He's not from England. He's from Scotland, and like other fellow writers who kind of write in the same way. For example, Robert Louis Stevenson, the author of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, O Mágico Monstro, he also is from Scotland, right? And he writes similar stories as Arthur Conan Doyle. Similar, I mean, like in genre, not the same way that are structured, right? And by Conan Doyle, we are going to read two stories, right? We're going to read this one of today's class, The Adventure of the Dying Detective, and The Adventure of the Sussex Vampire. Yes. And these are famous Conan Doyle Sherlock Holmes stories, and they're really enjoyable. I don't know if you have had the experience of reading Sherlock Holmes before, but his stories are great. They're really great. They're really nice to hear, and they're really interesting to read too. Yes. So these are our readings in August. We're also reading another author this month, who is called Nathaniel Hawthorne, right? Nathaniel Hawthorne was an idol to Herman Melville, the author of Moby Dick, right? Moby Dick is dedicated to Nathaniel Hawthorne. Yeah, so I mean, if you saw a picture of Mark Twain before, he looks exactly like Mark Twain, but it's a different person. And Nathaniel Hawthorne, he's the author of The Scarlet Letter, A Letra Escarlate. Probably you have heard about this book before or seen the movie adaptation with Demi Moore and Gary Oldman, right? In the 90s. And we're reading two stories by him, Dr. Heidegger's Experiment and The Birthmark. And Hawthorne usually writes about witches. He's from Salem, right? So he comes from the center, the epicenter of the witch trials, right? And he tends to write about this as well. The stories that we're reading, they are a bit of a sci-fi investigation, but at the same time, it has the Gothic in it because 19th century in the English language tends to be Gothic, right? Most of the time it tends to be Gothic. Yeah. We're also reading authors that, of course, are really prestigious, but maybe you have never had the chance to heard about them or read them before, like Doris Lessing, yes. Doris Lessing, she is what we call a multinational writer because she was born in Iran. She naturalized British, but she spent most of her life in Zimbabwe. So, I mean, it's very difficult to tell what kind of, who is she, where is she from, what kind of cultural perspective she has, right? But it's interesting because these multinationality, it shows in her writing as well. Yeah. And of course, she got the Nobel Prize in 2007, right? So she's a really celebrated author and worth reading. I love her stories and I hope that you enjoy reading her too. We're reading three stories by her, Woman on a Roof, Through the Tunnel, and A Sunrise on the Veldt, right? So these are going to be our part of our readings in September. Another multinational writer that we're reading this semester is Rudyard Kipling. He is the author of The Jungle Book, O Livro da Selva. He's the creator of Mowgli, right? And he also won the Nobel Prize when the Nobel Prize had just like begun to be issued, right? Because he is from the beginning of the 20s, right? Right in the beginning of the 20s and the end of the 19th. And we're reading some of the Jungle Book stories, right? We're going to read Mowgli's Brothers and The Miracle of Purum Bhagat, right? And you will see that he writes a lot about wild nature, mostly because he was born in India, right? Nobody really talks about this, but he was born in India and he lived a long time in India, of course, during British control, during the British Empire. So culturally, he's very British, but he was born in India, right? And then also got the British citizenship, right? So this is also what we're reading this semester in September. Then we're moving on to Marguerite Yourcenar. She is Belgian born, but I think she got naturalized French at some point. And she's also a very recognized author. And we're reading these two stories by her, which are part of a collection called Oriental Tales, right? So one of them is called How Wang Fo Was Saved. And there's even a Disney animation about this one, right? She doesn't write for children, but I found a Disney animation of this that was also made a while ago. And The Last Love of Prince Genji, right? Which is an intertextuality with one of the most famous and earliest stories of Japanese literature, the Tales of Genji, right? Which are kind of famous in the West more than other books by Japanese writers, right? And it's one of the stories that had created the idea of writing short stories in Japanese literature, right? So it's part of the Japanese literature, is really important for that. So she's creating some kind of intertextuality there. We're reading a short story by Joseph Conrad. Joseph Conrad is the author of Heart of Darkness. Yes. And Heart of Darkness was adapted into film by, I don't know, I don't remember the director. Is it Scorsese? Forgot, but the film is Apocalypse Now. Probably have heard of this before. It's a famous film. Yeah, it's a very good one. And we are reading a story which is called An Outpost of Progress, which is really similar to the topic that he talks about in Coração das Trevas, right? In Heart of Darkness. It's really good. He's a really interesting writer. And as some of the others that we're talking about today, he was born in Ukraine. He lived most of his life in like the earlier part of his life in Ukraine, and then he went to the UK and got naturalized British. Okay, he writes in English. He doesn't write in Polish and then translate. He writes originally in English, which is sometimes different from other authors like Marguerite Yourcenar, for instance, who writes in French. We're also reading some other writers who belong to different traditions, right? Ngugi wa Thiong'o is going to be one of our authors this semester. He recently died, right? He passed away maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and he's a really important writer. And we're reading 2 stories by him, The Village Priest and A Meeting in the Dark, right? And Ngugi wa Thiong'o, together with other writers such as Chinua Achebe, right, the Nigerian writer, he is one of those voices of that are writing literature after the African countries' independence from as like former colonies, right? So they do what we call post-colonial writing, right? They write after the colonization period has ended. So it's an interesting perspective on literature. Yeah. We're also reading Ted Chang. Have you ever heard of Ted Chang before? No? First time? Probably you have, but you don't know. Have you ever watched that film called The Arrival, A Chegada, with Amy Adams? She is a linguist that has to create a language to communicate with the aliens.
Yes,
The story is by
Yes.
him. Yeah, the story is by him, by Ted Chang. He is a like prodigy of current sci-fi. Yes. He is really, really good, and he is one of these writers that you mark my words, people. One day he's going to get like a really important prize because he's really talented. And we're reading this story by him. He tends to write sci-fi or speculative fiction, right? This kind of fiction that is like, what would it be if the world was like this and that, or if the world had gone wrong, you know, like these things, like if the world had been dominated by artificial intelligence or something like this. He writes in similar tone to dystopia, for instance, right? And the story that you're reading by him is called Liking What You See, a documentary. And we're dividing it in 2 parts, right? So we're reading him throughout 2 weeks because the story is a little bit longer, right? So we break it down. Yeah. So this is November as well. Another Nobel laureate, this time a more recent one, Hong Kong, the South Korean writer, she got the Nobel Prize last year, right? And her most famous book is The Vegetarian. We're not reading some parts of The Vegetarian. We are reading a short story that is called The Fruit of My Woman, right? And you can see by the image that is something similar to what she talks about in The Vegetarian, something associated with ecology, with nature, with climate change, with all of that, this kind of things that we are discussing at the moment, right? So this will be our December reading together with Ambrose Bierce, who is from the USA, and he writes horror stories. Yes. And we left him for last because December is almost Christmas. And literature in the English language tends to celebrate ghost stories or crime stories during Christmas for whatever reason, right? This is their cultural tradition. Yeah? They like to read this kind of stories during Christmas. There are many celebratory editions of crime fiction and horror fiction during Christmas time. For instance, Sherlock Holmes was first published during Christmas, a Christmas special. Yes. So this is quite nice. It has to do with the culture that is connected with the Celtics, right? To Celtas. They believe that in the end of the semester, in the end of the year, we have a veil that separates the earth world and the spirit world. And at the end of the year, during Christmas, this veil disappears. So this kind of influence their writing as well. Yeah, so you can see that it's pretty common. And the last short stories of the semester, we're reading The Moonlit Road and An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, right? So by the cover, you can see there's gonna be some ghosts in the story as well, right? So you can celebrate your Christmas the right way with ghosts. Good. Very good, people. So these are the authors that we're reading this semester. And you will see that you're going to have like a ride this semester. We're going to read several stories, right? And I think this is great because short stories usually works like this. You end up liking the authors and you want to read more and more by them, right? You can ask anybody who has been doing all the courses last semesters here, like they read a short story and they become fans and they want to know more about this author. Yeah, so it's a good way to be introduced to new authors as well. Okay. All right, so not to extend too much of our time, I thank you very much. In the next class, I promise we're going to focus more on the text, right? And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer either now or you can send me a message later. Have a great time, people. Enjoy and see you next week to talk about the Sussex Vampire.